I'm Rob Hallam and welcome to Car File. Now on this week's show we're going to be looking at mini MPVs, those not quite a car, not quite a van machine that are becoming ever so popular. So if you've got loads of kids, loads of stuff, you run a taxi firm, or maybe you need to sleep in your car, this show's for you. Here's what we've got coming up. The Car File opens on the not so tiny Tino, the latest MPV offering from Nissan. Does it improve on the benchmark qualities and features set by the Scenic? Then the virtually unpronounceable Daewoo Takuma takes centre stage on Car File. Are mini MPV's features plus top value? We'll find out. Then in part 2 we test out the HRV concept, which claims to take the mini MPV idea up to another level. Then test drive the latest Mitsubishi Space Star. First, here's Richard Hammond.
Mini MPVs, they're great, they're definitely the way forwards. They take up no more space on the road than your average family hatch, but they've got all the practicality and flexibility of that one-box format. The only problem is they're about as interesting to look at as a test card. Let me prove it. See what I mean? Which would you rather look at, this or this? 50-50, isn't it, really? But we're going to see an awful lot more mini MPVs on the road. Experts predict that over its first 10 years, that particular segment of the market will triple the number of sales, if not more. This is the latest to join them. There's only 4 or so on the market now. This new one is the Nissan Almera Tino. It succeeds in slipping by pretty much unnoticed when it comes to the drive as well, by virtue of being really quite impressively neutral. There's very little of the usual rock and roll you'd get from most of the other mini MPVs. It corners very flat and level. That's because it has the same rather clever suspension you find on the Almera. There's not a huge amount of power. You can have a 1.8 petrol, a 2-litre petrol, or a 2.3 direct injection diesel. They're all quite strong engines, but nothing much to write home about. Nissan, of course, now very much under the control of Renault. And if you're looking at the Tino and thinking, there's something rather Renault scenic-ish about that, don't bother, because this car was well and truly underway years before they decided to get together. It's based on the Almera platform, a car much loved by the elderly driver who can no longer stand the frantic pace of their heyday in their Micra. It follows the usual pattern. Take your hatchback car, take the body off, put a single volume body on top of it, give it MPV characteristics but all in miniature, and off you go, one practical car. Nissan say that they've styled the interior after digital cameras, interestingly enough. By that they mean all the little silver knobs and buttons and the kind of clean, quite sharp lines. Which is interesting because Nissans are the favourite transport of the incredibly aged and infirm. They're hoping at Nissan to get a much younger audience for this. Obviously, they're after the kind of dynamic young family type, 35, 2 kids, you know, the sort of thing. I'm not saying it looks unpleasant, because I don't think it does. There's some nice lines on it, and it does have a certain, almost aggressive stance from some angles. It's just not desperately interesting. I'll put the test card up. The interior, though, is actually quite decent. They've put a bit of thought into it. It certainly looks different from the usual hatch. And interestingly, they've shunned the usual, put the seat about 6 inches higher than usual so you feel in command. They've actually put it slightly lower, so it's not much higher than an ordinary hatchback. The result is you don't feel like you're driving a big vehicle. You do feel you're in something quite compact. It all works very well in here, it's just not very interesting, but then it's not supposed to be. The idea is that you use the car to do lots of interesting things with your crazy family life. But the result is, well, you're better off with the test card. Look. There's nothing wrong with plagiarism. In fact, I'm all for it. If manufacturers nick one another's best ideas, the result is going to be better cars. But you do need to add something else to make your car unique. And this, I'm not sure that it's got that. All the other mini MPVs have. There's the Zafira from Vauxhall. It's the only one with 7 seats. The Fiat Multipla looks like nothing else on earth. Citroen's Picasso, you can have a full-length sunroof. And at least Renault with the Scenic can still just about claim to be the first. But this, what does it do that the others don't? Probably the only thing that it will do is be built in Japan. It shouldn't break down, it should last. And the build quality is undeniably very good. Both good features, but hardly interesting. So I guess for you and me, we're best off getting back to the test card.
You know, car manufacturers are just like kids. If there's a new toy out, then they all want to have one. And the latest must-have is the compact MPV.
And Daewoo don't want to be left out, which is why they've launched their 7th new model since they arrived in the UK 5 years ago. It is, of course, a mini MPV, and it's called the Takuma.
It's taken 3 years to transform the Takuma from concept to reality, and Daewoo have had help from some of the top names in the industry. Pininfarina and Ital Design have added a touch of Italian flair to the styling, and Porsche have been brought in to work on the handling.
Now don't get too excited at the mention of Porsche, because let's face it, you're never going to buy either a Daewoo or a mini MPV because of its performance. And with that in mind, the Takuma comes with 2 very sensible engine options. A brand new 1.8 entry-level engine, and this, the 2-litre CDX, which you can also find in the Nabira and the Laganza. Now, it doesn't exactly pack a punch, I've got to say. It produces just 119 brake horsepower, has a top speed of 112 miles per hour, and 0 to 60, well, it just seems to take absolutely ages. And this is with just me in the car, so you can imagine what it's like when it's fully loaded with a family and all the paraphernalia they carry with them. Well, it's bound to slow the proceedings down quite a lot. Next up is practicality, and here the Takuma scores top marks. You get plenty of room for all 5 passengers, and there's a very flexible interior.
And you can't complain about the price. The 1.8 costs £12,495 on the road, and this 2-litre CDX is £13,495. And for that you get good levels of equipment, plus Daewoo's warranty and free servicing package, and the option of a free advanced driver training course to help you live up to the challenge of driving a Daewoo. Now the only point left to consider is, will the Takuma make the other mums green with envy? Well, I'm afraid that distinctive grille on the front gives the game away that it's a Daewoo, and you can name drop Porsche and Pininfarina all you want, but it doesn't have their badges on the back. So no, you're not going to get next door's kids spurning their mum's Mercedes for your Daewoo. So you'll just have to congratulate yourself on your sensible buy and treat yourself to a nice holiday with all the money you've saved.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, and that's it for part 1, but keep watching because after the break we've got Hyundai and Mitsubishi's entrance into the MPV game, so I'll see you in a bit.
Minivans, people carriers, MPVs, call them what you will, they're here to stay. It's reckoned that around a quarter of all cars sold in the UK now are MPVs, and that figure's likely to rise as high as a third in a very few years. Arguably, Mitsubishi invented the concept of the MPV in 1983 with the Space Wagon, still in production today, and this is its baby brother. Now, MPV theory is quite simple. If you want more space, go upwards rather than outwards. Does it give a lot more room? The short answer is yes, it does. We'll talk more about that later. First of all, let's see how it drives. The cabin's a very pleasant place to be. It's wide, it's airy, that sloping windscreen gives a nice large dashboard. It makes it feel probably bigger than it actually is. The suspension, as you might expect, is set up for comfort, so it's fairly soft without being soggy. The brakes are good and sharp. There's ABS on all except the base model. It's the usual setup, discs at the front and drums at the rear. As a place to be and as a driver's car, it's pretty quiet, it's good on the motorway, cruises very happily at 75, and by the way, it's at 70-75 that it's its most economical too. The steering's nothing special, it's reasonable and it's power assisted, but the big letdown for me, I'm afraid, is that there's no air conditioning until you get to the very top of the model range. To look at, frankly, it's nothing very special, but then none of the MPVs are. In fairness, if you're setting out to maximise the space, there's a limit to what you can do with the shape. This one has a particularly high waistline, steeply sloping windscreen, which is again typical of MPVs, gives a lot more room inside, a nice big spacious dashboard. And on the side here, you might be surprised to see a badge that says GDI. You might be surprised because that makes it sound like a diesel, but in fact it's not a diesel engine at all. The DI part of it is petrol direct injection. It's a very lean burn engine, so as well as good power output, it also returns terrific fuel economy, around 40 to the gallon. The much smaller, much less powerful Don't Go There 1300 engine, which is also available in the same body, returns just 1 mpg better on fuel figures. And with a couple of minutes of fiddling about and removal of 3 headrests, lo and behold, you get all this extra luggage space here too. And because this sill is so low and the tailgate is so big, it does make loading very easy indeed. But you're not actually left with a particularly long load space, but better than most estate cars.
The cheapest Space Star is the 1.3i at £11,200 on the road, and the range-topping 1.8 GLS is £15,340. We tested the 1.8 GLX, costing £14,000 on the road. Top speeds 118 miles an hour, 0 to 60 time 10.4 seconds. There's a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, and Mitsubishi do have an excellent reputation for reliability. With a warranty like that, they need to. That said, this Mitsubishi is made in Holland alongside the Charisma and the small Volvos. And frankly, the build quality is not as good as a Japanese Mitsubishi.
If mini MPVs are indeed to be the next big thing, then I reckon this one makes sense. It should hold its value well, and that tremendous warranty will certainly help there. Is it a real MPV? Well, in fairness to Mitsubishi, they don't say it is. They call it a high-roof hatchback. And for sure, it makes a good alternative to a conventional estate car or a large hatch. Loads of room for family and for luggage, and with those tremendous fuel consumption figures, maybe you shouldn't feel too guilty about taking this one solo on the commuter run.
In a world that's packed with every kind of car you can imagine, Honda have decided to invent a new one for us. They've called it the HR-V. So what exactly is it? Take 2 parts compact city car, add an equal measure of sports utility vehicle, throw in a large pinch of hatchback, estate and 4-wheel drive. Blend well and garnish with plenty of accessories. There you have it, Honda's recipe for creating a brand new concept of vehicle that they hope will send the youngsters wild. Yes, Honda have realised that not many young people buy their cars, so they're aiming the HR-V at the dinkies. Double income, no kids yet, or the sinkies, just the same but only 1 income. Well, tempted or not, what do you actually get for your money? Well, this is the only version of the HR-V on sale yet. It's the 1.6 and it comes with 4-wheel drive. Now this 1.6 engine is extremely economical and also produces very low emissions. It's just under 14 grand and you get a choice of manual or a CVT, which is Honda's automatic gearbox. The HR-V comes with the high levels of spec that we know and we love in a Honda. Things like power steering, air conditioning, dual airbags and a full electrics package all come as standard on this vehicle. Spending some time in the HR-V makes you realise that it is actually a very clever optical illusion. Now it certainly outside doesn't have the on-road presence of one of those huge off-roaders, but once you get inside you really do feel like you could be in a 4x4. There are very clever design touches, things like the open windows that give you a great commanding view on the road. And take a look at these wing mirrors, they're absolutely huge. They really are the kind of thing you'd find in a much larger vehicle. Now because it isn't a true 4x4, that of course benefits the on-road handling and the ride. It feels great, you feel like you could be in a car. The automatic CVT gearbox, which features in this version, is great. It's really nice and smooth. The automatic fans and the grannies out there are going to love it, but it isn't going to excite a real motoring enthusiast. But don't worry, because there's plenty more real technology featured with some very impressive names. Things like Multimatic transmission, Prosmatic control, electronic brake force distribution, and dual pump four-wheel drive. Now, the dual pump is actually a very clever system. It's an intelligent four-wheel drive. It only sends the power through to the rear wheels as well when it's absolutely necessary. Now, the only problem I can see is that only 93% of off-roaders actually go off-road. So I don't know if the 4x4 system in this vehicle will see a lot of action. And again, as usual in a Honda, there are plenty of safety features packed in. Things like G-force control technology and a special kind of body shell that means should you inadvertently hit a few pedestrians, they won't get hurt quite as bad as they would have done before. Do you know, it's funny, I've been trying all day to find somebody to test that feature out for me. Couldn't find one person willing. Oh well. Those of us familiar with Honda's work, of course, know they're a solid, sensible company who take their technology and their cars very, very seriously. Quite terrifying then to read the word funky in the HRV's press pack. Even more frightening, the words urbane, cool and futuristic. Personally, I reckon the HRV looks less catwalk cool and more tarts handbag. You'll find alloys, flared arches, spoilers, two-tone upholstery, two-tone interior, lots and lots of bright blue dials. Inside there's loads of room for passengers and all their stuff. There are so many cubby holes and storage spaces in this vehicle that you're absolutely guaranteed to forget where you put your sunglasses. Oh well. Now, Honda are one of those companies well known for their technological advances, and they haven't let us down on the HRV. They've come up with something new. The removable ashtray, voila! It simply pops out of its position and can be replaced in any one of the 5 cup holders you'll find in the HRV. Very clever, eh? Without a doubt, the HRV is going to make plenty of new friends. It's quirky, it's great fun to drive, and of course it's a Honda, so everything will work every single day. But I've got to say that although we know we should buy a car that's fun, sensible and extremely reliable, I'm afraid that faint heart never won fair maiden, because what I really want is a car that's bad, that's bold, and that makes my pulse race. Oh well, better keep on searching.
Ah, the rolling hills, gorgeous countryside and camping. What more could you ask for? I've got the bare essentials, I've got my tent, stove, penknife. Oh, and a Renault Scenic RX4. Well, you didn't honestly think I was going to walk up here, did you? Now, in order to make the Scenic off-road capable, Renault have raised the body shell 4 inches, have changed the suspension, fitted off-road tyres and adapted the drivetrain so it's driving all 4 wheels. And, well, it certainly looks the business. Now, the same 2-litre petrol engine's used on the RX4 as on the standard Scenic. It's about 140 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 just under 12 seconds, which is pretty good for something this size, but I don't think you'd be doing that in a field. Now, the engine is quite high revving, which may be okay on the open road, but I think it would suffer when you get on terrain any harsher than a few bumps. Now, being realistic, this car probably isn't going to be used for playing about in fields as I was doing there, but I had a great time and I think it proved just what the car is capable of, which is quite impressive. But when you get out on the open road and you get a bit of speed up, the first thing you notice is the driving position. It's a little bit weird and a bit like driving a transit van, but I'm sure you'll get used to it in time. Visibility, brilliant, apart from the front, because I haven't got a clue where the bonnet is. No, still can't see it. Now, performance up at sort of top speed, it feels okay, it feels quite confident, but some of the bends it does start to wallow a bit. But I guess you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't have good performance off-road and perfect sports car performance on-road. So I think Renault have compromised and gone for a bit of both, and I think it works quite well. Now, with styling on the RX-4, there's no doubt that Renault really wanted to give it that off-road feel, and they've succeeded with solid wraparound bumpers, alloy wheels and those purposeful off-road tyres. Now, the engine we were driving was the 1.8 petrol, once again identical to the regular Renault Scenic. Now inside, the interior again is identical, and I'm not so sure about the interior, but I do love all the fold-out trays and great little storage holes for putting all your bits and pieces. And when it comes to storing things in the back, the tailgate is split, so you've got a top section that opens for throwing in just a little bit of shopping, but if you've really been out on the town, the bottom section opens as well, so you can put all in the heavy loads, and it's a nice low level, and once again, some great little storage holes. So there we go then. Well, I can honestly say that this car has really grown on me in the short time I've had it. I think for 18.5 grand it's well equipped, but the big question is, do you really need four-wheel drive on a car like this? And I think if four-wheel drive is your main criteria when you buy your next vehicle, the Renault handbook sums it up when it says this is not an all-terrain vehicle. Well, that's it for Car File this week, but next week we've got a real battle of the giants for you. In the red corner, we've got Audi, and in the blue corner, we've got BMW, and we'll be putting them head to head to see who comes out on top. So you've got to watch to find out. See you later.